moved to the Mid-South from California. His name is Dale Mesmer, but everyone calls him Mad Dog. His purpose in coming here is to talk to you about choices. You're going to hear about some of his choices, both good and bad, and choices of others he has known. You may have seen Mad Dog on the Lisa Gibbons Show, the Home and Family Show, Save Our Streets, and many news and documentary broadcasts across the country regarding his Straight Talk outreach program. He is featured on several national TV commercials, including The Club, Blockbuster Videos, Rain X Car Wax. He is featured on NBC's Working and Mad About You. He is a regular guest on The Maury Povich Show, working with at-risk kids, taking them to boot camp, as well as working on the new show Home Delivery, and is a nationally known speaker. A television movie of his life is in the works. Mad Dog served in the United States Marine Corps, attended college, and was a successful business owner. He has earned several black belts in martial arts and is an expert with all forms of weapons and firearms, including explosives, and is a movie and television actor and stuntman, and the co-founder of America's Youth Ranch, a last chance for at-risk kids. Unfortunately, Mad Dog made some bad choices in his life, and as a result, he was on the FBI's most wanted list and spent almost 11 years in maximum security prisons in several states. He is here today to share some of his hard-learned lessons so you won't have to learn the hard way. Please welcome our guest speaker, Dale Mad Dog Mesmer.
Thank you. Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay? Good, good. Are you guys happy to be here today? Oh, that was enthusiastic, I swear. You guys ought to be thrilled to death to be here, and I'll tell you why. Real simply, it's because your education is singularly the most important thing you can ever do for your life. Without an education, you'll be handicapped in life. You won't be able to go the places you want to go, have the things you want to have, or do the things you want to do in life without an education. People can take advantage of you without an education, and I can illustrate that one to you very quickly. I served time in prison in Tennessee with a guy. In his hometown, everybody thought he was a great guy. He come from a small community, one a little bit smaller than this one, and he had several businesses, had a car wash and a fast food joint and a couple of gas stations and a construction company and stuff. And he always made it a point to hire kids that did not have a high school diploma. He went out of his way to give these kids jobs. And everybody thought he was great for doing that for them. Because it's hard to get a decent job without that piece of paper. Because the bottom line is, that diploma, it doesn't prove how smart you are, and it doesn't prove what you know. But it does prove one thing beyond any doubt. It proves that you are willing to work to earn something for yourself. If you're not willing to earn something for yourself, why would I hire you to work for me? That's the way employers think. Get that piece of paper, believe me. You'll appreciate it later in life. It'll make a difference in what your life's like 20 years from now, that's a guarantee. The guy that I told you about earlier that everybody thought was so great for giving these kids a chance, the reason he was in prison with me, over a 10-year time period, he stole $20 to $30 a week out of each one of those kids' paychecks because they weren't sure how to figure out exactly what their check ought to be at the end of the week with all the deductions. He hired them because he was pretty sure he could steal from them. That's one small example. Get all of this you can get. Part of your process in getting educated involves many things. One of the things you learn about is making choices. And that's why I'm here today, to talk to you about choices. Plain, simple, common, ordinary, everyday choices. You make hundreds of choices every day that you don't even realize. Simple stuff. What shoes you're going to wear, what shirt, what you're going to drink with your lunch, things like that that will not change or affect your life in any way. But some of the choices you're going to be making in the near future, and some of you already have, can change or affect your life dramatically, drastically, maybe even end your life. And the scary thing about those dangerous choices, they're not going to come from somebody like me that you've never seen before. They're not going to come from a stranger. The choice that will change your life forever is going to come from somebody you know, a friend, an acquaintance, maybe a member of your family, maybe the person you're sitting next to right now. The reason those choices don't seem to be dangerous is because you don't think that person would ever do anything to harm you. That's why you need to be able to recognize them for what they are when they come by. There's another reason why your choices are going to be very important real soon. There's a new federal law going into effect in this country nationwide in July of this year. And it's aimed at you guys. It was written specifically for 14 to 18-year-olds. It's based on California law that's been in effect in California for 5 years. And it's working big time. I'm going to get into that in detail in a little bit. I got some numbers I'd like you to think about before we get off into this too far. Out of every 100 kids born in the state of Wisconsin, by the time they turn 21, 15 are in prison, and 7 are dead due to drug or alcohol-related choices. That's 22 out of every 100 kids born in this state that do not have a happy 21st birthday. And actually, those figures are kind of low. They're higher in a lot of other states. Every 24 hours in America, 24 hours in this country, in the 14 to 18-year-old age group, every day, 36 teenagers are shot to death by other teenagers. 56 are permanently crippled. 26 die from drug overdoses. 33 drink alcohol and try to drive a car and they die. 42% of the time they kill someone else, and over 80% of the someone else's that they kill is either a member of their immediate family or one of their friends. 36 a day are killed by a drunk driver. That's either getting into a car with one or being hit by one. Something all these kids have in common. Actually, 2 things they have in common. The first thing is they got that teenage thing going on, you know, oh, it won't happen to me. I won't get caught. I'm above suspicion. I'm too smart. They'll never catch me. They'll catch somebody else. They'll never catch me. If you do happen to think that way, try to keep one thing in the back of your mind. To everybody else here, you are the someone else that's going to get caught, not them. The other thing all these kids had in common, none of them thought it was the last choice they would ever make in their life. But it was. I spoke at a school in Kansas City about 3 months ago. It was before Christmas. It's longer than that now. I was supposed to come up on a Monday morning and give an assembly to the junior and senior class, much like what I'm doing right now. And I got up there. Kids started coming into the auditorium. Principal told me how many kids to expect. I'd spoken to him the week before. And the kids started coming in. I was standing backstage like I was now, just kind of watching people come in. And suddenly dawned on me there weren't nearly as many kids coming in as what he said there would be. And I got curious, so I asked him, what's up? Where's everybody at this morning? He said, well, we had a dance here on Friday night for our junior and senior class. One of our senior boys kept sneaking out into the parking lot and getting a drink out of a bottle of liquor that he'd stolen from his dad. When the dance was over, him and his little brother went out and got in the car along with their dates, and when he pulled out of the parking lot, he pulled out in front of a cattle truck. The boys were sitting on the left side of the car. The truck hit them so hard it tore both of the boys completely in half. It took them 3 hours to find one of the girls' heads. All the kids were at a memorial service. 4 kids died in a snap, in the blink of an eye. They didn't think it would ever happen to them. I promise you that it can. I've seen it. You know, the thing that really saddens me when I think about that instance and many others I've seen, every one of those kids knew that he'd been drinking, and they still got in the car with him. And he knew he'd been drinking, and he went ahead and tried to drive. Do you think he might have known that he was going to kill everybody close to him? Do you think you would? Keep that in mind. I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about drugs, a little bit about what life's like in prison, and a little bit about making choices involving that stuff. Some of the things I have to say today might scare you. That's not my purpose nor my intent. I'm not going to waste my breath or your time trying to scare anybody. Besides, some of you young guys think you're 10 feet tall, invisible, and bulletproof and are going to live forever. I can guarantee you that's not the case. I learned that the hard way in 1968, a long way away from here in the Marine Corps. Some of the things I have to say today might offend you. I don't care. I would prefer you be offended for a couple of minutes listening to some harsh reality than be offended the hard way by making a choice that'll put you in a place where I can guarantee you, you will be offended. Everything I talk about today comes from personal experience. Been there, done that. I didn't see it on TV or in the movies. I didn't read about it somewhere. I experienced it. And I've got the gunshot wounds and the stabbing scars to prove it, along with the FBI rap sheet that's 9 pages long. I know what I'm talking about. For the purpose of what I do, kids, there's 3 groups of people in America. There's lots of groups. But for what I do, there are 3. Group number 1. These are intelligent people. These are people who learn from other people's mistakes, and they do not make them. I was recently reunited with a guy that I went to junior high school and high school with after about 40 years. And we got to talking. He says, I was always glad you were my friend when we were growing up. And I said, why? He says, because you'd always take things a little bit too far and get hammered for it. That's where I knew how to stop. I said, well, I appreciate helping you out that way. Then we have group number 2. These are smart people. They make mistakes, though. Everyone does. Not just you kids. Every person in this room, everybody in America, everyone makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect. The last perfect man walked this earth over 2,000 years ago. Ever since then, everyone else has been making mistakes. But smart people learn from their mistakes, and they do not repeat them. Then we have group number 3. These are people who make the same mistakes over and over again, expecting different results. These folks are not very bright. If you've been sent to the principal's office more than once for doing exactly the same thing, you might want to start thinking about which group you're working your way into. I'm here today to keep you out of group number 3. Tell a little bit more about myself before we start this full bore. Understand my history and background a little better, maybe. I'm a 60-year-old former United States Marine Corps gunnery sergeant. I spent 10 years in the Marine Corps from 1965 to 1975. I was an 8541 Scout Sniper in Force Recon while I was in the Marine Corps. When I left the Marine Corps, I went to work for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department as a SWAT team training supervisor. Taught hand-to-hand combat, pistol craft, and sniper classes. I've got a 5th-degree black belt in Taekwondo and a 2nd in Aikido. I've been a martial arts instructor about 35 years. I left the Marine Corps. I took a contract with a company in South America doing security on a gold mining operation in Brazil. While I was down there, I saved my money. I came back to the States. I invested that into a business. Over a period of time, I worked it up to the point where I had 14 separate businesses. I had over 400 people working for me. I've got a bachelor's degree in journalism and an associate's in business management. They say I'm a pretty smart guy. Then I made one stupid choice in my life, and it changed my life forever. Not only did it change my life, but it changed the lives of my wife and kids too. Your choices don't just affect you. They also affect the people around you that care about you. You might be the one that goes to jail or dies, but everyone who cares about you will also be affected. When I went to the penitentiary for federal convictions and state convictions revolving around drug smuggling, my wife got killed in a car wreck 2 years after I got locked up. I never saw her again. My kids went into foster care. It took me 2 years after I got out of prison just to get permission to go see my kids. I have 5 sons and 3 daughters. My middle son to this day will not speak to me, not even on the phone, and he won't let me see my grandkids. And I can't blame him. I was busy being a convict when I should have been a father. The choices I made affected all of their lives. The choices you make will affect everyone's life around you also. Keep that in mind. Tell you about a friend of mine named Mike Griffin. Mike's a sergeant with the LA County Sheriff's Department. I've known him about 9 years now. We work together with young gangbangers in a program out there. I'm out there for 3 days every month working with him. Mike's a real laid-back kind of guy. He never gets excited or upset about anything. He comes from a real big family. He's got 11 brothers and sisters. I don't know exactly what the breakdown is. But every summer, his family is one of those families that has a summer family reunion every summer. They all get together someplace. Well, this last year, one of Mike's friends with the Sheriff's Department was retired, and he's moving back east somewhere. He's getting out of California, which is a smart thing to do, by the way. And he couldn't get everything that he was taking with him loaded into the U-Haul truck. So he started calling his friends and giving some stuff away, that he decided he didn't need to take with him. And he called Mike on the phone. He said, "Mike, would you like to have my parrot?" Bright, colorful bird, squawks and talks and stuff. Mike said, "Wow, yeah, cool. I'd love to have him. I've never had anything like that. I'd love to have a bird." And the guy told him, he said, "Well, I got to be honest with you, okay? Got to be straight about this, This bird, he swears and cusses constantly. And he's loud and obnoxious." Mike said, "You know what, that's okay. I can teach him. I can train him. I'll take the bird." So he went over and he got the bird and the cage, had wheels on it, the whole deal. Brought it home and he went to work working with this bird, trying to teach it not to swear. A few months later, Mikey's grandma called him. She said, "Mike, we're going to have the family reunion at your house this summer." Made Mike a little nervous. So he decided what he'd do is he'd hide the bird cage. And so before everybody showed up, he rolled the bird cage back into the laundry room in the back of the house and he covered it up with a sheet. When the sheet's over the cage, the bird's quiet. He thought that'd take care of it. Things went real well on Friday and Saturday and stuff, but on Sunday afternoon, his grandmother went back into the laundry room for something. And she saw the bird cage there. She knew what it was, and she was curious, so she lifted up the sheet to see what was in there. And when she lifted up that sheet, that bird broke loose with every one of those words that George Carlin says will get you in trouble for saying on radio or TV, not to mention at home or at school. And he was loud. And his poor old grandma about had a stroke. I mean, she's all up against the wall having heart palpitations, She'd never heard any words like this down at the Baptist church before. She was shocked. Mike heard all the commotion. He ran back there to see what was going on. The bird was still going wide open. And for the first time that I've ever heard of, Mike lost his temper. In a fit of anger, suddenly he opened up the bird cage. He reached in, he grabbed the parrot, and he looked around for a second. Then he opened up the freezer door, and he threw the bird into the freezer and slammed the door. And this was followed by the most god-awful squalling and squawking and scratching that you ever heard. But after a minute, it gradually died down to nothing and got real quiet. Mike got to looking around. All of his nieces and nephews were standing there looking at him. They're all wide-eyed and horrified. They couldn't believe what he'd done. He's a little embarrassed, kind of ashamed of himself for losing his temper. So he opened up the freezer door, and he stuck his hand up there, and the bird jumped out on his hand, walked up his arm, sat on his shoulder, and kind of shook the cold off for a second. And the bird took a big, deep breath, and he said, "Sir, I would like to apologize to you for anything that I may have said that offended you or your family, and assure you that I'll never use language of that type again around anyone you know. And if I might ask a question, sir, what did the chicken do?" For those of you that don't get that, go home and look in your mother's freezer. If the parrot got thrown in the freezer for swearing, he couldn't imagine what caused the chicken to be killed, plucked, cut up, gutted, frozen, or wrapped in plastic. He must have been doing something terrible. Ladies and gentlemen, the chicken is what's known as an object lesson. That's a lesson that puts you into group number one. It lets you learn from someone else without having to experience it. Today, I encourage you to learn from me. Please do not go learn the hard way, because it will be the hard way. I didn't come here today to make you sing or laugh or dance or to entertain you. That's the only joke you're going to get all day. The rest of this stuff you want to keep in your mind, because it can change your life if you don't. I told you earlier about a new law that's coming. Let me qualify this for you and explain to you where it came from and how it works. I was living in Southern California in the late 90s, and they were having a serious upward spiral of juvenile crime up there, especially crime involving juvenile gang and drug activity. And most of that led to violence. They decided they had to do something to put a stop to it. They got their heads together, and they put 3 new laws together aimed at 14 to 18-year-olds and packaged them up under a deal known as Proposition 21. It passed. It went into effect in California in 1999. Let me give you an idea how this law worked in California. In the state of California, when the law went into effect, they had 31 prisons statewide. Now today they have 71 prisons statewide. They have 22 more under construction, and they just got the funding to build another 10. The juvenile population of the California Department of Corrections was 6% in '99. Today it is 34%. There were 1,600 probation officers statewide in '99. Today there are 23, because nobody gets probation under this new law. Well, it worked so well in California that Senator Dianne Feinstein and Barbara Boxer, they took it to Washington. They proposed it as legislation for a federal law. It was voted on, it passed, and it goes into effect this year. Their target date right now is July. But a lot of that's going to depend on construction factors, and you'll understand that in a moment. There's actually 3 laws involved. One's aimed at young people that think gangs are cool. And basically what it amounts to is it gives the government the authority to lock you up for being a member of a gang. You don't have to commit any other crime. I'm not going to get into that one in great detail other than to say, those of you that pay attention to government class, does anybody see anything wrong with them being able to lock you up for hanging out with people? It's unconstitutional, guys. Freedom of assembly. California didn't care when they put the law into effect and started enforcing it. The federal government didn't care when they voted it in, and they're going to enforce it. Now, that law will eventually be overturned just because it's unconstitutional. But that's okay with everybody, because they don't mind when they overturn the law, which will take somewhere probably between 8 and 12 years to get to the Supreme Court. They're going to take a lot of people off the streets. And when the law is overturned, they have to turn them loose. That's fine. That means they have empty bed space for new convicts. So they don't care. All they're doing is taking people off the street. That'll hurt society and people. Second half of this law is called the Gang Leaders Act. It makes every leader of every clique or set equally responsible for any act committed by any member of his or her gang with or without their knowledge. That means if you're the shot caller in some clique or set, and one of the members of your gang goes and commits a crime and they catch him, you're going to do the same amount of time that they do. You don't even have to be there or know about it. The second set of laws is aimed at young people that think guns are cool. It's called the 1020 Life Act. It's very simple. If someone commits a crime and they have a gun in their possession, shoplift a Snickers bar and have an unloaded gun in your pocket or in your backpack, you're going to get an additional 10 years flat added to your sentence. That's 10 times 365 every single day of it. If someone uses a gun during the course of a crime, you still don't have to load it or fire it. Just get it out and wave it around. I have a gun, do what I say. Mandatory 20 years flat. That's 7,300 days, every single one of them. Under the life portion of the 1020 Life Act, if you pull the trigger on a firearm during the commission of a crime, and you've seen it in the movies a bunch of times. In fact, I did it for a French TV show here about 6 weeks ago. Boom, boom, everybody on the floor, do what I say. If you fire the gun, that's a mandatory life sentence. The most important of these three new laws is the one I want to make sure you guys understand. It's a Senate bill, and I don't remember the number of it. It's called the 14 Felony Act. It does several things. This is the one that's responsible for the sudden increase of juveniles in the prison system in the state of California. By the way, 11 other states have already adopted these laws on their own. They're not waiting on the federal law to kick in. Oh, and before I get too far past this and forget it, the feds are going to enforce this law on the local level. That means if you break the law, it will not be a U.S. Marshal or an FBI agent or Secret Service guy or somebody like that. It'll be the local law enforcement guys here that come and put that law on you, and the local prosecuting attorney. And it's real simple. They're going to enforce this law the same way they did the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit law back in the 70s. You can ask your teachers, some of them, how that worked. The states that wouldn't comply with the law lost all their federal funding to build schools, hospitals, highways, stuff like that. They're going to do the same thing with this one. Under the 14 Felony Act, first thing it does, it will make every kid in America legally an adult at the age of 14 if they commit any crime. Now, did you catch that? Any crime? As it stands now, to be tried as an adult, you have to commit a pretty serious crime. Murder, attempted murder, armed robbery, rape, something like that. Under the 14 Felony Act, if you commit any crime, no matter how minor it may be, you'll be charged, tried, and sentenced as an adult if you're convicted. The difference between y'all and me, if we both go out and commit exactly the same crime today, I'll get twice as much prison time as you will because you're juveniles and I'm an adult. The 14 Felony Act stops that. You'll do the same amount of time as any other adult would. As it stands in most states, and I believe Wisconsin's one of them, if you get sent to the state juvenile correctional facility with a nonviolent crime and you have a good behavior record while you're there, when you turn 18, usually they will give you parole and give you a second chance. The 14 Felony Act stops that. On the day you turn 18, they will ship you to the nearest Department of Adult Corrections facility where you'll finish serving the rest of your sentence with people my age. And I can assure you, ladies and gentlemen, if that happens to you, you're not going to like what happens next. And there won't be a thing you can do to stop it. And I don't care how tough you think you are. The next thing it does, it changes the way that prosecuting attorneys can apply what's known as the three strikes law. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me talk about misdemeanors first. It changes the way they can handle misdemeanors. Do you guys understand the difference between a misdemeanor crime and a felony crime? Basically, a misdemeanor crime is something considered minor. Getting caught with cigarettes underage, something piddly, no big deal. Trespassing, vandalism, breaking a window costs $10 to fix, stuff like that. The easiest way to explain it is say a misdemeanor will get you less than a year in jail. A felony will get you 1 year or longer in jail, okay? Now, I've known, I don't know how many kids that keep getting convicted of misdemeanors, small stuff, cigarettes, alcohol underage, small amount of pot, little things, over and over and over and over again, and nothing much really happens to them. You know, they might spend the night down at juvie and then they're home again. Well, under the 14 Felony Act, it's strictly up to the prosecuting attorney in your area. But when you get convicted of your fourth misdemeanor, it automatically becomes a Class D felony requiring 1 year in the state penitentiary. If your fourth misdemeanor conviction is possession of cigarettes underage, if the prosecutor wants to, he can send you to prison. You guys remember the prosecuting attorney, don't you? You know, he's the guy that gets elected according to how many people he or she puts in prison. The more they lock up, the longer they keep their job. That's why we elect them, to take people off the street that harm society. You can bet he's going to do it. The most serious aspect of the 14 Felony Act, as I started to mention a minute ago, changes the way that prosecuting attorneys can apply what's known as the three strikes law. Are you guys familiar with the three strikes law? 3 strikes and you're out. That's right. Basically, officially it's called the Habitual Criminal Act. It was written to take people off the street who continue to break the law. In the past, it required 3 separate felony convictions on 3 separate occasions. You know, we'll get a conviction in 89, another one in 95. When you get your third one, you're going to get 25 to life added to your sentence. Under this new law, if a crime in any way involves drugs, gang-related activity, or violence, the prosecutor can apply the 3 strikes law in a completely different manner. Let me give you an example. Just for the sake of argument, let's say you're not too bright and you decide you're going to go rob the store. You need some cash. You run into the store with the gun in your hand, the clerk's in the back filling up the soda pop rack. You go grab her by the wrist, pull her up to the front of the building. She opens the cash register. You reach in and grab the money, and you run out of the building. 1 armed robbery, right? Does anybody here know how many felonies were committed during the commission of that one crime? Armed robbery, the act itself. Use of a firearm during the commission of a crime, which kicks in the 1020 Life Act. Theft of property, when you grab the money, run out of the building. Separate crime all by itself. And under this new law, if you force that clerk to take more than 1 step against their will through threat, force, or violence, that is now considered and classified as kidnapping. Let me show you how easily this works. Does everybody understand what just happened here? Thank you. You can sit down. I didn't mean to embarrass you. I did not ask her permission. I didn't say, will you come with me or come here or anything? Can I touch you? None of that. I took hold of her wrist and I pulled her up here. She came along nice and cooperated, and thank you very much, but you were coming whether you liked it or not. You just didn't know that. Under the 14 Felony Act, you'll be tried on Monday for the robbery, on Tuesday for the weapon, on Wednesday for the theft of property. Wednesday is the magic number. Thursday they invoke the Habitual Criminal Act, the 3 strikes law. Friday they try you for the kidnapping. They give you another 25 to life on top of that. Under the 14th Felony Act, all sentences must be run consecutively, meaning one after the other. You've got to serve one all the way out before you start the second one. You'll be eligible for parole on that one robbery in 85 years. As of last Monday, this week, 4 days ago, there were 2,773 teenagers in the California Department of Corrections serving that exact sentence. 323 of them were first offenders. They'd never been arrested before in their lives for anything. Ladies and gentlemen, those kids are going to die in prison unless they live to be over 100 years old and make parole. Kids, they are not playing with this new law. They're dead serious about it. And what it amounts to, it all comes down to money. And I'm going to explain this to you because then you'll understand why it's working. State of California had to build 40 new prisons. They got 22 more coming with another 10 funded. The federal government figured out real quick if they're going to put this law into effect, they're going to have to do the same thing. So they entered into an agreement with a company known as Corrections Corporation of America, CCA. CCA is a private prison company. They're a business. They're in business to make a profit. They're not the city, county, state, or federal government. They're there to turn a profit every year. They get $34,000 a year from the federal government for every inmate that they house to pay for that inmate's food, clothing, and medication. And try and keep this in mind. The less money they spend on food and things like giving you a coat in the winter when it's cold, the more profit they make. When I was walking down the hallway this morning, there were some young ladies walking behind me commenting on the food in the cafeteria. I can guarantee you, I know convicts who would kill you to eat as good as you eat in this school. They feed inmates on $1.40 a day for all 3 meals. 80% of your diet will be beans, rice, and cabbage. That includes breakfast. The law says they have to feed you 3 times a day. The law doesn't say anything about it has to taste good, and you have to like it. It just says they got to put 3 meals in front of you. I served time in a CCA-run prison in Nashville, Tennessee. Riverbend Maximum Security Facility, out 6 doors down the cell block walkway from James Earl Ray, the man that was convicted of murdering Dr. Martin Luther King. Serious prison. I got there from the federal prison system. I just finished doing my federal sentence in Atlanta. They transported me to Tennessee, brought me up in the front office, did my administrative paperwork. Then they sent me down to the prison hospital and started going through my medical records. Guy down there at the hospital started going through me. He says, I see here that you have a heart condition, and I do. He said, you take this medication twice a day? I said, yes, sir, I do. He said, these pills cost $24 a piece. I said, well, you know, I'm sorry about that, but that's what I got to have. I had had 2 minor heart attacks before. Well, I'm a disabled veteran. Well, the Veterans Administration had tried to get my medication figured out. By the way, they may tell you it's a minor heart attack. When it's yours, there ain't nothing minor about it. He said, well, $24 a piece, that's too much money. We're going to find something else. And I tried to explain to him that I'd already had 2 minor heart attacks because my medication wasn't right. It was at that point in time that he told me to shut your mouth, convict, and go back to your cell. By the way, you think the teachers talk tough to you here? There they'll talk to you like that, and they'll back it up by splitting your skull if you don't do what you're told on the spot. They don't play in prison. There ain't none of this go to in-school suspension. They will drop you where you stand and take you straight to the hole as soon as you mouth off or don't do what you're told on the spot. And they have hired guys who are very capable of doing that when it comes down to it if it's necessary. Believe me. I didn't always look like this. Well, they sent me back to my cell block. I did exactly what I was told to do. I was lucky I was in the state of Tennessee, because in Tennessee they'll allow an inmate to call their attorney anytime they want to. Many states don't. They require you to request to make a phone call, and sometimes that takes a day or 2. I went straight back to my cell block and walked up to that collect phone on the wall, and I called my attorney. Told her what had happened. That afternoon, she drove down to the federal courthouse in Nashville, Tennessee, and filed a lawsuit in my behalf for violation of my civil rights, denial of proper medical care. It's 1983, Code 42B, I believe. The judge heard the motion the next morning because it was filed as an emergency lawsuit. My heart, you know, my health was in danger. He ruled in my favor, wrote the motion out, and she drove it out to the prison. They took it down to the prison hospital administrator, the guy with the master's degree in business, you know, the one that told me I couldn't have my medicine. He wasn't a doctor. He was in charge of making sure the infirmary made a profit. They brought my medication to my cell. See, when they told me they wouldn't give me my medication, I refused to come out of my cell. I didn't go to breakfast, dinner, nothing. I stayed in my bunk and I laid perfectly still as long as I could. When they brought me my medication to my cell the next afternoon, my blood pressure was 235 over 198. For those of you that don't know what that means, if I'd have got up off that bunk to go to the bathroom, it would have probably killed me. But it ain't no big deal. Ain't like I was a real live human being or anything, just a convict. No big deal. These are the same people, CCA, who will be running the 400 new prisons that would be built nationwide over the next 2.5 years to help enforce these new federal laws. The state of Wisconsin is going to get 8 of them. Each one holds 3,000 inmates. They are currently looking for 24,000 volunteers. And all you have to do to become part of that group is make one bad choice. Because see, there's something else that happened here. CCA has another way of making money. And in fact, it's where they make the vast majority of their money. They have a deal in there known as corrections industries. And in corrections industries, they manufacture all kinds of products and goods that they sell in the free world. Mostly they make school and office furniture. One of the things that they make that I know everybody will recognize, they make the metal folding chairs. You know, like the Samsonite chair company makes, like the chairs the wrestlers beat each other with on TV, you know. By the way, for those of you that think wrestling is real, let me hit you with a chair once. I bet you don't get up. It's entertainment, guys. It's not sports. It's entertainment, okay? It's pre-planned, but I'm getting off the subject here. The difference between CCA and Samsonite pays their employees 6, 8, 10, 12, whatever it may be, dollars an hour to build those chairs. CCA, through Corrections Industries, pays their inmate workers 25 cents an hour to build the same chairs. But they sell them for the same amount of money. They make tremendous profit on inmate labor. The more inmates they have and the longer they have them, the more money they make. Now, everything I've told you up to this point comes down to what I'm going to tell you next, because this is why it works. This is why it worked in California. This is why it's working in the 11 other states that have already adopted it. And this is why it's going to work nationwide. Under the terms of this agreement, CCA has agreed that at the end of each year, they will return 10% of their profit from Corrections Industries back to the individual states where their prison facilities are located. Do you guys understand what that means? For the first time in the history of prisons in America, it will not cost the taxpayers of Wisconsin 10 cents to send a kid to prison for the rest of their life. Instead, the state of Wisconsin will average a yearly profit of $5,300 per inmate that they send to prison. What do you think the state's going to do, ladies and gentlemen? Spend money or make money? It's a no-brainer, guys, ladies. The reason I know these figures, I hate to admit this, but it's the truth. I own stock in CCA. I get a prospectus every 3 months. I'm an ex-convict and I own stock in a prison company. Kind of ironic. The thing about it is it's the fastest growing company of its kind in America today, involved in law enforcement and corrections. When I purchased their stock in '97 at $5 a share, I didn't even buy enough to buy a decent used car. It has since split 4 times. It's supposed to split again in July or August, and it closed out at $58.68. My little old piddly investment, which wouldn't even buy a good used car, is now worth well over $300,000. I'm getting rich because kids won't stay out of jail. Now, how sick is that? I'm here actually trying to put those people out of business. I'd love to see them go broke because there's no more kids getting locked up. If I ever do put them out of business, you can bet that I will sell my stock quick. You begin to see how serious this is going to get, kids? Oh, one thing I forgot to tell you about the 14th Felony Act. No probation, ever, period, for anything, no matter what. First offense, 25th offense. If you get convicted of something, you're going behind bars. It may only be for 5 days, it may be for 50 years. It's up to you. That's why they don't have any more probation officers in California. They don't need them anymore. Nobody gets it. I feel real fortunate to be standing here today. Actually, I feel blessed to be standing here, but that's another subject. And there's this stupid federal law that says I can't discuss that with you guys in the class. I think it's the dumbest thing I ever heard, but that's neither here nor there. See, I really shouldn't even be here, okay? I have no business being here. I should have been locked up for the rest of my life. Just on the federal charges alone, they could have given me 260 years, not counting the 14 separate states that had charges against me. I should have never walked out of a prison again for the rest of my natural life. That's why I consider myself to be very fortunate to be standing here. See, when I got busted, they made the mistake of letting me make bail. And I knew I was facing well over 200 years of prison time. I've been a bounty hunter for about 35 years. I still chase bail jumpers even today. I just can't carry a gun anymore because I'm a convicted felon. I don't really need a gun because I'm sneaky and I fight dirty. So it's not a problem. As such, spending years tracking guys down who disappeared, I know how to do it. It's a piece of cake to disappear if you want to, if you know what to do and what order to do it in. And before anybody should happen to ask throughout the course of today, I won't tell you, okay? To make sure that happens, because somebody always asks me. Well, I decided to take off on them. I was gone for 16 months. At the end of that 16 months, I had something that happened in my life while the FBI had my picture hanging in post offices all over America. Later on, after I'd turned myself in, I found out that I was about 3 weeks away from being on America's Most Wanted. John Walsh already had my stuff. And it's funny, I met John Walsh about 5 years ago. We both spoke at a crime and punishment conference, and he said, "I remember you." I said, "I don't know if that's a compliment or not." But I had something that happened. I changed my way of thinking, and I came back and I turned myself in. I walked into the FBI office in Nashville, Tennessee, knocked on their door, and stepped up to the plate. I was responsible for what I did. It's that simple. No legal loopholes, no legal meandering, no tricks of the trade. I did it. I was guilty. It's that simple. I walked into the FBI office, and you know, it's funny, if you've ever been into an FBI office, you can walk into one all you want. When that door shuts behind you, those are electric latch doors on FBI offices. You ain't leaving until they push the button to unlock the door. I walked up to the big bulletproof glass in front of the secretary there, and I knocked on the glass. I said, "Ma'am, I think you guys are looking for me." She asked me my name. And I told her, and she started going through a clipboard she had on the side of her desk with all kinds of big, long list of names. She says, I don't see your name on here." I said, "Just a second." I reached into my hip pocket, and I pulled out the FBI poster that I stole at the post office. Hey, I figure what's a couple more years, you know? And you all have seen, I believe you guys have seen copies of it hanging around here and there. I sent some down here. I held it up against the glass, and I said, "See?" She said, "Wait right there, please." A couple of seconds later, 4 great big old boys come out of that back office, looked like the front line for the Packers. And they had me on the floor hooked up so quick I didn't even have time to take a deep breath. 10 years, 8 months, and 11 days later, I was granted parole. The only reason I ever got out was because since I surrendered voluntarily and pled guilty to everything held against me, saving the states and the federal government, tons of money. They all agreed to run my sentences concurrently, meaning all my sentences ran at once. So 10 years, 8 months, and 11 days later, I was granted parole. I was sentenced to 3 25s, 8 20s, 11 15s, 9 10s, 8 5s, and I think the 2-year sentence was for the wanted poster, I believe. I was on parole for 2 years. I've been off parole now for 8 years, 5 months, and 21 days. Keeping track of days kind of gets to be a habit after a while. And I have to tell you, I feel fortunate to be here, because by all rights, I shouldn't be. The bottom line reality is that the feds estimated during the time that I was smuggling, I brought over 700 tons of cocaine into this country. And I'm responsible for all the misery and death and unhappiness that that brought about. To me, it was a business. It would be easy for me to say, oh, well, you know, if they were going to pay me to carry it in, they'd pay somebody to smuggle it in. But the bottom line is I did it. That's why I feel fortunate just to be here. I also feel fortunate to be here because the sentencing structures changed dramatically, especially under this new law, especially involving juvenile drug crimes. The best way I can illustrate that to you is to tell you about a young man that I know. A kid named Jose. I spoke at his high school in California just before this law went into effect out there. And I got a letter from him, and he's told me that he was there. He remembers me coming to his school. Now, whether he was listening or not, or napping or joking with his buds, or just didn't pay attention or didn't care, or didn't think of what happened to him, he was there. Jose's a good kid. Never been in any trouble before in his life. Middle of his senior year, they caught young Jose with what's known in the drug business as an 8-ball of cocaine in his car. 8-ball is 3.5 grams of cocaine. It's not even enough to fill up a good-sized aspirin bottle. Unfortunately, Jose had his cocaine package in 7 separate half-gram containers. Under the new 14th Felony Act, if your drugs are packaged separately in any way, you are a dealer, period. If you have 2 joints rolled up, you're a dealer. You got 2 pills, you're a dealer. The sentence for being possession with intent to distribute is 4 times greater than the sentence for simple possession under this new law. Well, they charged him, tried him, and convicted him of possession with intent to distribute Schedule II narcotics, cocaine. Sent him on down to the penitentiary. He arrived there right after his 18th birthday. First offense, they gave him 80 years under the 14th Felony Act, and they did him a favor because they didn't charge him with anything else. They dropped all the relative charges to it and just charged him with the cocaine possession with intent to distribute. Because they just put 1 charge on him, he's eligible for parole. He's got to serve 1/2 of his sentence before he gets his first chance at parole. He'll be there for 40 years. Jose will be 58 years old before he gets his next chance to walk outside when he wants to, go to the store, go to the movies, go for a ride in a car, go on a date. Well, he's kind of dating now, but he don't care much for it. Unfortunately, Jose doesn't see the humor in it. A lot of people do. I was out to visit with him here a while back. I'm one of the few visitors he gets. His parents cut him loose when he got locked up. They won't even answer his letters. I was out there about 5 months ago to visit him. And I was waiting in the visiting room for them to bring him up, and it took a while, and he hadn't come up. And I asked the gardener, you know, what's the deal? He said, well, we got to get him out of suicide prevention. I said, what's up with that? He said, well, he tried to hang himself 3 times in the last 2 weeks. When he came out, I got to talking to him and found out that he decided he'd rather be dead than have to continue to live through what the older inmates were doing to him on a regular basis. He decided he'd rather die. And Jose's not some skinny little kid. He's 6'2", weighed about 245. He had a 4-year free ride scholarship to go play football at UCLA. Of course, he didn't get that. Just think, he's only got 39 years and 4 months to go. I guarantee he don't think drugs are cool at all anymore. When they busted me, they invoked a deal on me known as the RICO Act. It stands for Racketeering Influence Corrupt Organization Act. It's a law that was originally written, signed into being by President Richard, I am not a crook, Nixon. And it's a law that aimed at people like I used to be, drug dealers or drug smugglers. Under the concept that this law gives the government the authority to seize and take all your property and assets so you're no longer financially able to carry on in your illegal activity, whatever it may be. Originally, it was written for drugs. Now they can use it for literally anything they want. When they busted me, I got busted on a Wednesday. I made bail. On Friday morning, federal agents walked into my house. They walked into all 14 of my businesses and the 2 banks that I had money in. They served the RICO papers on me, and they popped me for $3.8 million in liquid assets and $9.4 in total property and assets at my home. They gave me, my wife, and kids 20 minutes to pack 1 suitcase full of clothes apiece. They searched them. That was all we were allowed to take. They wouldn't even let us take our wedding pictures or the newborn pictures of our kids. They walked us out of the house, changed the locks and the alarm codes, walked us off the property, closed the gate, chained and padlocked it shut, drove a sign down the middle of my driveway, said, "Property, United States government, no trespassing." In 20 minutes, I went from being a multimillionaire to having $65, because that's all I had in my pants pocket the morning when they got there. That money's gone. It'll be gone forever. I'll never see it again. They've expanded the use of the RICO Act all the way down to the city, county, and state level, and now all law enforcement agencies can use it for whatever they want. I was reminded of that very close to my home. I live down in southwest Missouri. A young lady that went to high school with my daughter recently got busted for shoplifting. Unfortunately, they had her on videotape. They didn't get her caught in the store, but they saw the tag number on the car, called the sheriff. The sheriff came and checked out the deal, found out who she was, went to the house with a search warrant. She had shoplifted a CD player, the kind you plug into the dash of your car and comes through the speakers, you know, lays on a seat and plays. They come to the door, searched her bedroom, they found it. Took her off and arrested her. CD player cost $159.95. That makes it a felony in Missouri. She's going to prison. So much for going to college over a CD player. Then they backed the wrecker into the driveway and they hooked onto her Mustang, the car that her folks helped her buy so she could go to college, because it was used to help transport stolen property. They just sold her Mustang at the auction a couple of weeks ago. It's gone. And she still owes the bank $8,000 on it. Actually, her parents do, because they co-signed on the loan with her. And the bank just put a lien against her parents' house. That's kind of how the RICO Act works now. Got a little bit of dope at home hid in your closet, and toe of a shoe under the bed, between the mattress and box springs, back of a drawer somewhere. If the cops come in and find it, they can put you and your whole family out in the street legally if they want to. And they can sell everything you own and they get to keep the money. How would you like to explain that to your parents? Because if they want to do it, they can. It's strictly up to what they want to do. Mostly it depends on how mad they are at you. If for some reason they don't like you, you've just had a real bad day. How many of you guys own a car? All right, quite a few. Cool. How many of you guys hope to own a car someday soon? All right. I think every kid in America that I ever met loves their first car. And I don't care if your first car is the sorriest piece of junk in the parking lot, or if it is the slickest, shiniest, fastest thing out there. Every kid loves their first car. I did mine. My first car was pure junk. I had a 1954 Chevrolet 2-door sedan, 6-cylinder, 3-speed on the column, would not start car. But I love that old car. And I spent more money on the stereo than I did buying the car. Does that sound familiar to anybody here? Oh, yeah. Things haven't changed that much since from my time to yours. Just back in our day, we had 8-track tapes. You can ask some of the teachers around here. Some of them are old enough to remember that. The rest you can look it up in your ancient history, I guess. Well, and I'll tell you what, if you own a car and you tell me you've never done this, you're lying. I see it every day. Every time I go to a school, I see it every day. You'll see a kid stop somewhere in their car, shut the door and lock it, and they're going into the movies, the mall, the school, someplace. And sometime or another, before that kid gets inside that building, my car, they'll turn around and look at it. Tell me you've never done it, you're lying. I do it. I still do it. Some of the places I go, I turn around and look, make sure my car's still sitting there. Tell you what, let me tell you a little story. We'll see what you think real quick. And I got to hurry through this because I'm running out of time. Just for the sake of argument, let's say that the state of Wisconsin has bestowed every one of you with a driver's license. You all now are licensed drivers in the state of Wisconsin. God help us. You're out on a Saturday afternoon cruising around with all your friends in the car, got the stereo bumping, having big fun, being free and alive and American. Out of the back seat, one of your friends comes up out of their pocket and they say, "Hey, man, let's smoke this." Ding. There's that choice I warned you about in the beginning, the one that's going to come from a friend. Just for the sake of argument, let's say you're not too bright and you tell him, "Sure, man, fire that thing up, let's smoke it." So now you're cruising down the boulevard, got the stereo bumping, being free and alive, enjoying your friends, smoking a joint, getting high, and looking for the drive-through window because we got the munchies now. Oh, yeah, been there, done that. And as you're driving down the street, you drive past Officer Friendly. He's sitting off over on that side street in that big Ford Crown Vic doing his paperwork. He hears your speakers thumping over at about Wausau, you know. And as you go blasting by in front of him, he looks up to see what the deal is, and this is what he sees. Here, man. And he knows you're not passing a Winston. He now has what's known in court as reasonable suspicion. That is, any act seen, heard, or observed by a police officer, give him reason to believe the law is being broken. And you can bet, here he comes. He's going to kick that big Ford Crown Vic in the rear and come on out there. Let me give you some free advice before it crosses your mind. When the lights come on, don't even try to outrun that Crown Vic, because you can't do it. Those cars will run 140 mile an hour all day long, and they'll drill a Corvette in a quarter mile. I know, I own one. I bought it from the California Highway Patrol auction. My brother-in-law's got a brand new Corvette. Paid $60,000 for it. He's so proud of that red car. And I took him to the drag strip in Springfield, Missouri 6 weeks ago on a reasonably warm, dry day and drilled him by 4 car lengths in my 4-door Ford. You ain't gonna outrun that big Ford. And if you try, he's gonna get on the radio and call all of his friends. And when they do get you stopped, you're gonna learn a whole new definition of the phrase, having a bad day. Not to mention the fact that if you run from the cops now, it's a felony and it means prison time. You're going to look in your rearview mirror, you'll see all those lights come on, you'll hear the siren, be looking up and be going, oh, shucks, or something like that. Then everybody will get into their act. You know the one I'm talking about? Holy cow, guys, get the windows down, smoke out of the car. If nobody else has ever told you, let me be the first one to put something on you. I don't care if you drive 100 miles an hour for a week with the windows rolled down. You're not going to get the smell of pot out of your hair, clothes, and upholstery. It will not happen. The THC chemical residue of marijuana smoke sticks to everything that it touches, and the smell lingers for days. If you've smoked a joint today and you walk by me, I'll smell it on you. If you smoked one in the last 3 days and you do something to cause you to start sweating, I'll smell it on you. And by the way, not only can I, but so can your teachers. You're not fooling anybody other than fooling yourself. You'll step up the window of your car, you'll lean down, say, may I see your license, registration, proof, insurance, please? Aha. He'll notice that fragrant aroma, and as soon as he smells it, he's going to look you dead in your eye. And as soon as he does, you're in trouble. See, he's not looking to see if your eyes are bloodshot. He's looking for 4 separate other indicators to tell him whether or not you're under the influence of drugs or alcohol. And by the way, no, I will not tell you what they are. Besides, if you're not doing it, you don't need to know what they are. If you are doing it, you don't need to worry about Officer Friendly. He's not your problem. Your problem's going to be that inmate doing 2 life sentences up to state penitentiary. It's got a knife hidden in the back of their pants and thinks you're next. That's your problem. You'll notice nobody thinks that's funny, huh? It ain't. As soon as he sees that in your eye, he now has what's known in court as probable cause. He now has the legal right to pull you out of your car, search your car, and have you tested for drugs or alcohol. When he says, please step out of the vehicle, just go ahead and turn around and give your car a little kiss goodbye, because if they want it, they're taking it, they're keeping it, they're selling it, and you're drilled. You owe money, that's your problem. I have a thought for you. How about if you were driving your mother's car? How'd you like to make that phone call? Hi, Mom. Yeah, I'm down here at the jail. Can you come get me? You might bring Dad's car. They said something about keeping yours. Oh, no. I'll tell you what, guys, my mother's 84 years old and she's about this tall. She's one of 2 people on this earth I know can kick my butt anytime she wants to. My wife is the other one. For those of you guys who are laughing, look around at the married men in the audience. You'll notice they are not. You guys don't have a clue what's coming yet. You just think you're going to be running something. Oh, how about if you were driving your dad's car? Just a thought, huh? Guys, I don't have the time to get into all the things I'd like to talk to you about today, because I'm going to have to close this up in a couple minutes, but I do want to tell you about a friend of mine. I hear kids tell me all the time, oh, Mad Dog, I have lots of friends. Let me make something clear to you guys. No, you don't. You have lots of acquaintances. If you're very fortunate throughout your entire lifetime, you may have 5 true, genuine friends if you're very lucky. See, I judge friends a little differently than most people. A friend is somebody who will stick with you no matter what. I judge my friends on a guy named Joe Kowalski, a guy I served in the Marine Corps with. Years ago when we were younger and considerably dumber, we had a difference of opinion one night after an evening of imbibing in spirits. And it all ended with him going to the hospital and me going to jail for beating him up in the parking lot. The next morning after he got out of the hospital, he came down and bailed me out of jail for beating him up. That is a friend. Your friends are the people that are on your side when you're right. They're right there telling you you're cool, you're doing good, patting you on the back. Way to go, buddy. I'm proud of you. Your friends are also the people that when you're doing something that's wrong, illegal, or stupid, they will be the first one to get in your face and tell you you're dumb, knock it off, change what you're doing. Because you see, they care more about what happens to you than what you think of them. That's a real friend. If somebody is willing to destroy your friendship for your benefit to keep you from ruining your life, that's somebody who really does care about you. Be sure you consider that when they're telling you stuff you don't want to hear. Because if they are your friend, they will tell you stuff you don't want to hear. I want to tell you about Roger. Roger's my best friend on this earth. I met him in 1967, a long way away from here. Roger's an African-American graduate of the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. Graduated 6th in his class in 1965. He went on to become a naval officer. I forgave him for that. He should have went Marine Corps. He also went on to become a Navy SEAL, member of the team, SEAL Team 2 during that time period, and he became an explosives expert. In 1967, he and I wound up working together for a short period of time. And on any given day during that time period, Roger could have got everybody on the team that we were working with killed just by making one bad choice. I mean, something as simple as, do we go this way or that way? He must have been a pretty smart guy. Everybody came home. Some of us were beat up and shot up a little bit, but we all got home. 75, Roger got out of the Navy. Moved back home to Memphis, Tennessee, where he's originally from. Met a nice girl, got married, and settled down there. I was the best man at his wedding. I was also the only white guy at his wedding. I had big fun. I proved to them folks that white men cannot dance. Hey, I can't dance, but I sure have fun. I don't care if anybody watches. He went on to have 3 daughters. I'm the godfather to his oldest daughter, Tanisha. 8 years ago, my friend Roger went to a New Year's Eve party with his brother Ricky. While he was there, one of his friends, you notice I use that word, one of his friends offered him a crack rock. He said, try this, man, you'll like it. It'll make you feel good, you'll enjoy it. Roger's an intelligent guy, but he's also curious. He'd heard of it. He knew what it was, but his curiosity got him. He decided to give it a shot. I want you to understand something about my friend Roger. Roger was physically the biggest, strongest, toughest guy I've ever personally known in my life. 6'6", weighed 260 with a 34-inch waist, ran 8 miles every day of his life. Worked out on the bench. Guys, those of you that do weight training, he did sets on the bench with 350. Guy was a monster. His arms were almost as big as my legs. He was able to, no, I'll tell you this instead. 7 weeks before that New Year's Eve, on November the 10th, he and I were out celebrating the Marine Corps birthday. November the 10th is Marine Corps birthday for anybody who knows or cares. And we weren't really celebrating the Marine Corps birthday together so much as we were just remembering guys we won't ever see again. And I made Roger a bet. I would like to think on that occasion that I must have been drunk, because I don't think I'm stupid. And I have since given up drinking completely, believe me. I bet him $100 he couldn't curl my weight. You know, curl my weight. He said, $100, huh, dog? I said, yeah. He stepped down off the bar stool, took his right hand, took a hold of this belt buckle, the one I'm wearing today. There ain't another one like it in the world. I made it. He lifted me off the floor with his right hand. He set me back down and said, give me my $100, dog. Big, strong, healthy, tough guy. 7 weeks later, on New Year's Eve, he fired up that crack rock the first time, and it stopped his heart. He dropped to the floor like they'd cut his legs off. His brother Ricky was smarter than to call an ambulance because he knew it would take too much time. They threw him in the back of a car. Ricky did CPR on him while they rushed him to the hospital. My phone rang in Los Angeles at about 2 in the morning. His wife, Anita, called me, told me what happened. I caught the first thing smoking out of L.A. I got to Memphis at about 10 o'clock. Went straight to the hospital. I got there right after they finished wiping his face and wiping his butt and changing his diaper because he was a vegetable. He was brain dead. His brain went for too long without oxygen. He didn't know his wife and kids. He didn't know me. He didn't know if it was daylight or dark outside. He didn't know nothing. 11 months and 2 weeks later, Anita called me again. I flew back to Memphis. And me and Ricky and two of his Navy SEAL dive buddies, the four of us carried my friend Roger's coffin, and we buried my brother. A man that I love as much as I might love my own wife and kids. It took him almost a year to die, kids. 11 months and 2 weeks. That's all the longer it took him to make the choice that killed him. For 1 second out of his whole life, he didn't stop and think. Just 1 second. That's all it took. Now his wife doesn't have a husband. His daughters don't have a father, and I lost the best friend I'll ever have on this earth. I'd give anything in the world if I could have been there that night. Because I promise you, he'd have never fired that rock up. He might have beat me like a mule, but he'd have never fired that rock up. He'd have had to kill me. You got a friend that's doing dope? Are they really your friend? You better be getting in their business, because if you don't, sooner or later, they're not going to be here. That's a guarantee. During the time I was involved in it, I met hundreds of people, and I never met one, not one, that didn't pay the price sooner or later. Every time I do this, I hope and I pray that everybody's listening. More importantly, I hope somebody here actually hears this. So before I shut this thing down, I want to say a couple things real quick. If you're in that group of people, and there's always somebody, I mean, just, time has proven that to me. Somewhere in here, there's a kid sitting here right now thinking, well, bald-headed old fart, I don't care what he says. That's fine. At one point in time, sooner or later,